Hello, I'm Jacob Chandler, and I'm a Boy Scout. Today is November the 1st, 2015, and I'll be interviewing Mr. Don Moses. He served in Korea. This interview is part of my Eagle Scout service project. The LaSalle Veterans Exhibit and interviews are part of my Eagle Scout service project. The Gina Cultural Center of Gina, Louisiana will display my LaSalle Veterans Exhibit.
Okay.
So, Mr. Don, what era did you serve in?
I served in the Vietnam era from 1965 to 1972.
Yes, sir. What was your rank?
I was anywhere from Airman Basic up to an E5 Staff Sergeant in the Air Force.
Yes, sir. Would you point to the areas on this map where you served during your service?
Well, let me find this here. I started off in Texas and was, after basic training, went to California to Monterey, California, where I was in the Defense Language Institute studying Korean. And I came back to Texas for tech training, and from there I went to South Korea,
Yes, sir.
to Osan Air Base in South Korea.
Yes, sir. All right. Mr. Don, how old were you when you entered into military training?
I was 22 years old.
Yes, sir. I know you mentioned all the areas you went to go train at. Can you kind of describe your training at those locations?
Well, in Monterey, it was start off with basic training. After that, everybody has to go through that. And when they enter the service, you have to go through basic military training. And from there, of course, I went through a lot of testing. I wanted to be an air rescue, you know. But they decided I was better suited to be a linguist, to go into language training. So we go with whatever they tell you to do in the service, you know.
Yes, sir.
I went from there to Monterey, California. Immersed in a Korean language classes. We went to school. We'd get up in the mornings and we'd get dressed and we'd go to classes from 8:30 to 11:30, and we'd break for lunch, 11:30 to 1 o'clock, and we'd come back and go to classes from 1 to 4:30. And then pretty much the rest of the day was ours, but we had to study a lot. You know, we had to study what we had learned in the day and what we had to present the next day. It was total immersion into the Korean language. We had to, when we went to class, we spoke Korean. And
Wow.
we listened in Korean. You know?
Yes, sir.
We had to understand what was being said. And of course, it was hard for the city boys. They weren't used to living out in the boonies, but we went through some training, basic survival training in classrooms and what have you, and then they took us out and dropped us off at a spot out in the mountains in Washington State. From there, you know, we had to build our own shelters, catch our own food, and survive. You know, they taught us basic survival skills.
Well, go ahead.
Then of course they teach you what they call escape and evasion tactics. and you have to get from the point where you are to another point, and then prepared for a different culture when I got over to Korea. It
Yes,
was totally different than what we're used to here in the States. I mean, the people are different, but I came to love the Korean people and respect them. They were hard workers. They respected us because, especially the guys that were trained in the Korean language that were at our base over there. They liked us because we would speak to them in their language.
Yes, sir.
And we got along very well with the Korean people.
Well, I know during your service, of course, you were trained to be a linguist. Did you, what all positions did you serve at during your service?
Well, I served as a voice processing specialist where, we just translated Korean to English, and later, after I went through the Czech language, I was trained to translate from Czech to English, but I never used that but one time in my whole time in the service. Most of the time it was Korean that I used,
Yes, sir. Well, what all gear and equipment did you have issued to you?
Oh gosh, we had just, our uniforms over in Korea. There was a time during the Pueblo crisis that they issued us a weapon to walk perimeter guard in our compound, but they didn't give us any bullets for it. So we always thought that was kind of strange, we had to get out and walk. They just wanted a presence out there to where we could be seen walking guard duty. And we all took our turns doing that. But once I went on flying status up at Omaha, they issued us our regular survival gear. They issued us flight suits, parkas, different things, cold weather gear, because we would be flying through the Arctic a lot. So.
Yes, sir. Well, what all medals or decorations were you or your unit awarded?
Our unit in Korea was awarded the Outstanding Unit Award for that area for our performance during the Pueblo crisis because of the volume of translations and data that we processed through our unit.
Yes, sir.
And,
I see your awards you have here. Can you kind of explain what some of those are that you remember?
well, there's a Good Conduct Medal. I can't remember all of them. Longevity Medal, American Expeditionary Forces Medal that was issued to us in Korea. This is an Outstanding Unit Award. This is a Good Conduct Medal. The Longevity Medal. And, I don't remember what all of them are. It's been a long time.
Yeah,
since I'd have to look at a book and tell you what they are.
Yes, sir.
This one here was issued in the National Guard. That was for going through the NCO Academy, graduating from there.
Yes, the non-commissioned officers.
Right. Non-commissioned Officers Academy at Camp War Guard in Louisiana.
Yes, sir. Well, can you describe a typical day in the service?
Oh, which period, you know?
Yes, sir.
Basic training, you know, most guys know what typical day is. You get up before daylight and you're listening to a bunch of yelling and screaming and telling you to do this and do that, and then you go out and you stand in formation and you answer roll call. You come back, you clean your barracks, make sure everything's spit shined and put up right, and all your buttons are buttoned, and your clothes hung properly on your racks, and everything in your foot lockers displayed properly, and then you go out for breakfast. And you go and stand in line. You know, in the service, everything's hurry up and wait. You hurry to get there, and then you wait in line until it's your turn to eat. And then you go in and you would stand. You know, we just sidestep through the line and stand at attention, sit on the edge of our seats, eat just as fast as we could, put our plates up, and go out and stand in line. Wait for the DI to come out, or the TI in the Air Force, the training instructor, come out, and he would march us back for our daily routines while we were in basic training. We'd have physical training. We'd go to classes for training in military customs. Then we'd go to testing, different testing we'd have to have. We'd go, you know, like I say, we'd take different aptitude tests to see what we were best suited for. And we'd get all our physical, you know, our dental problems. If we had any dental problems, they'd take care of those. If we had anything else that was physically wrong with us, they'd correct that. And then we'd go in, stand inspections. Then, of course, when I went to language school, it was a totally different deal. We'd get up in the mornings before daylight, in the fog, because it was always foggy in Monterey. We would stand. We'd go out for roll call, and we had, I'll give you a funny thing that happened. The guys got where they would try to wear as least amount of clothes that they could to go to roll call. So, you know, we had one guy that he was going to win it all or less, you know. Some of them go out without their shirts on, some without their boots. Well, he pulled it off. He went out without a stitch on. Of course, everybody was giggling, but nobody could ever see him because he stood on the second row, and he was always there, and he'd always answer up. You know. But he was a character.
Yes, sir.
But then we'd go to class. We'd eat breakfast, of course, and then go to class, and we'd be in class we had an Air Force section, there was an Army section, and then a Navy Marine section, all right together. We had classroom. Of course, we'd take breaks, and we intermingled with all of them. I met guys in the Army, you know. One of the guys that I went through language school with is still one of my best friends today.
Yes, sir.
We've known each other 50 years, and still go and visit each other. You know, he comes to Gina, I go to where he lives in Sherman, Texas. So.
Yes, sir. Well,
built some good relationships.
Yes, sir. Well, that's good. What about, can you describe a typical day during your service in Korea?
Yeah, our days there were pretty busy. You know, we'd go to work. We worked shift work. We worked 3 to 11, 11 to 7, and 7 to 3. And it depended on which shift you were on actually how much work you did, you know. But it just, we'd go in and we would do our work that we were supposed to do, you know, and then come in and the rest of the day was ours, you know. The guys, normally they'd go to the NCO club or the Airman's Club or somewhere, or go down in the, what we call the V, down in the village, you know, and just goof off.
Yes, sir.
I mean, we had a lot of time. We worked three days, one shift, 3 days another, and 3 days another. It just kept rotating. The time went real fast. Now, during the Pueblo crisis, we worked round the clock. I mean, I worked so much that I back then I smoked, you know, and we could smoke in our ops area, and I'd have my headsets on. I'd be typing at the typewriter, and I'd have one ear off so I could hear what was being said to me, and I'd be translating Korean, and I'd be typing, and my master sergeant came up to me one time. He said, "Sergeant Moses, it's time for you to go down the hill." And I said, "What for?" He said, "Well, look at what you're writing." And I was typing everything I was hearing on those headsets and everything that was said in the room. So he said, "You've worked too many hours." And I had. I'd worked 2 or 3 straight days, you know, with maybe an hour's sleep. And we were all that way. It wasn't just me. But it was kind of funny. I remember that. And then, of course, I went down to my bunk and crashed for about 12 hours. I was okay.
Well, let's see. What did soldiers usually do while they were off duty?
Oh gosh, it depends on who you are, you know, and what kind of background you've had, you know. Of course, I was pretty much a rounder when I was young. I had a good background. I taught at a school, at a girls' school there in Korea. I taught English. They wanted me to teach because of my accent. You know, I had a southern accent, and it just tickled those little girls to death to hear me speak Korean with my southern accent. I'd go in, and of course they have accents in Korea too, and the southern end of Korea is an island called Cholado, and I picked up some of that, you know, and I came in there and one day, and of course you say Anyang Hashimnika to say hello to them in Korean. Well, in Cholado they say Anyang Hashidankiro. They roll it out and have a funny accent, and those girls went crazy. But they always begged for me to come back and teach. And the rest of the things we did, we just, you know, the guys, we played golf. We had a good golf course on the base at Osan. If we could keep the slicky boys from stealing our balls when we'd hit them up the hill, you know, they'd run across the fence and steal our balls, and we'd get up there and we wouldn't have a ball to play with, so we'd have to just play from wherever we could. We thought we hit it to, you know. Call them slicky boys. They were thieves. That's all they were. But they could get under that fence so quick. We had a big high fence with wire on the top of it. You know, with razor wire on top of it. They run right through it. We couldn't get through it if we wanted to.
Yes, sir. Well,
but that's things we did. And like I say, had shows. I remember James Brown coming over and performing
Wow.
in the theater, and that was a big deal, you know.
Yes, sir.
And I can't remember, there was a couple other groups. Of course, the USO shows came over, and they were good, you know, during Christmas.
Yes, sir. Well, do you remember any, I know you was talking about the Pueblo incident, at least that's how you said it, I believe. What all missions stood out to you in particular from your service?
Well, that incident, you know, and then of course there were some flights with flying out of Omaha that were especially vivid in my memories. I mean, different things happen, you know, that bring them to mind. Some of them I can't go into, but they were interesting. And of course, we flew. You know, we'd leave Omaha and we would fly for 36 hours before we'd land again. And then, of course, we'd be on the ground for 3 days, and then we'd fly another mission down in the Gulf of Tonkin, down around Vietnam. And then we'd come back to the Okinawa, and then we'd fly home after 3 days. So we would be gone, about a week and a half when we would leave Omaha and come back. I remember one mission that we were flying, and boom from the refueler hit the windscreen of our aircraft and kind of cracked it, and we depressurized real fast and had to land up in Alaska and get that repaired, and then flew back to Omaha because they'd already sent another aircraft to fly our mission at that time.
Yes, sir.
But different things, you know. I enjoyed the flights over to Lake and Heath and Mildenhall. I got to see part of Great Britain and Scotland.
Yes, sir.
That was interesting.
Well, I see you have some photos here. Can you describe to me what's going on with these items here?
Well, this is we were getting in the security service. They award us a Beaver Award for doing 30 days or 60 days or 90 days work without any errors. And this bunch here, we were getting our Silver Beaver Award, I think is what it was. And these are just some friends of mine. That's Captain Bieber. I remember most of these guys. That's Dick Risk and Bill Norris, and this guy was a Epperman or Baberman or something. I can't remember his name. Of course, that's me. And then Captain Bieber there.
Yes, sir.
This is my Czech class at Monterey, and all those guys, I can't remember half their names. I never served with them. These guys, I was in language school with them for 9 months, but I can't remember their names. Of course, that's a picture of me for my flight folder. They had us take these pictures. They didn't want us smiling because if they ever had to identify us after we'd crashed or something, they just wanted a somber look on our face. That was made in Korea at the barracks. I was in civilian clothes there. That's some Korean dancers. This is just a picture of me in my uniform. I don't know who made that. It was made probably in one of those photo booths. Of course, that's another picture there. That was made after I went to work for the sheriff's office here.
Yes, sir. Well, See here, this is a certificate about your survival training.
Uh-huh.
Yes, sir. And you got a few other of them. Here, this one says you were successfully did the instructor course.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good course. We had some good instructors there teaching us how to teach. We had to come up with a lesson plan every day, and just like a regular teacher does. We went through, I don't know how many hours it was, but it was a lot, you know. And then, of course, after I finished that, I was able to go and teach the guys to do what I had been doing in the service. So
Yes, sir.
teach them my job, just passing it on. You know.
Yes, sir. Well, see here, this is this document in that one right over there. That's about from your language institute.
Yeah, this one was for my Korean. That's my Korean graduation diploma, and that one was for Czech, for the Czech language.
Yes, sir.
Of course, those are just, you know, went through a lot of training in the service. I'm sorry I don't have any more memorabilia, but
Well, this is certainly all good for the display.
but you lose it over the years. It gets, you know, you move. I had moved so many times since I've been home out of the service. I'm surprised I have any of it left.
Yes, sir. Well, can you describe to me your transition from the Air Force to United States Army or National Guard?
Well, it was different. You know, of course, I was here. I was in Gina, and I was kind of going from job to job, you know, and this was before I went to work with the police department in town of Gina. Pat Druitt, I don't know if you know Pat Druitt or not. Vicky Buckhalter is his sister, if you know Miss Vicky.
Yes, sir.
He asked me to come over and join the National Guard. He thought I'd be an asset over there because of my security training, intelligence training that I had gone through. So I did. I went over and joined up and was with the combat engineers over there at Camp Beauregard.
Yes, sir.
I was in the S2 section, which is intelligence. Enjoyed it very much. It was different. It was a lot more rigorous training than what I had in Air Force. Of course, they made sure you were in good shape over there, you know. But it was good training. Good. You know, we went a lot of places that have a 25th Engineering Group, where we got awarded the Meritorious Service Medal for a remote team, where we were going and making sure everybody was combat ready and able to do their jobs everywhere. It was 4 of us that went, and it ended up with our unit getting Meritorious Service Medal for that. We went to, while I was with them, we went to Panama. We spent 2 weeks down there building roads, which was quite an experience. It was a lot of fun. I mean, it was dirty, hot work. You know, you're down in the tropics, and we were living in tents, and so that was different for me.
Yes, sir.
than what I was used to.
Mhm.
It was a good, I enjoyed it.
Mhm. Yes, sir. Well, after your service ended, what did you do? Did you go into work or?
Yeah, after I got out of the Air Force, I went to work a lot of jobs. Went to work for the U.S. Mint in Denver. I worked there for 9 months. Then I moved to Indianapolis, Indiana, where I went to work for Midwest Foods, where we were taking products off the trains, putting them on pallets and moving them in cold storage. I was driving a forklift. We'd move stuff in and out, and you'd come out, you'd get real hot, and then you'd go into those fast food, fast freeze deals, and you get ice all over you before you come out again. I kept pneumonia up there all the time, so I had to quit that job. I came back home, and I tried to get on with the state police. I took the test for that, and scored real high, and was hoping to go to work for them. And the weekend before I was supposed to report down to Baton Rouge, they said that someone else had been chosen. But that was all right. I went back up to Denver and went back to work for Kenny's Shoes. Does that sound right? Kenny's? Shoe place in the mall, selling shoes. I still didn't like that, so I took a test for a police officer job in North Glen, Colorado. And I did real well on it, but I didn't do well on part of it, so they said, come back and take it again in 6 months. We'll hold you. We'll hold the position for you. And the guy was even nice enough to tell me why I didn't do well on it. I had just gone through some tough times in my life. I'd gone through a divorce and lost jobs and just wasn't doing real well, so my psych part of the test just didn't show up very good. He said, there ain't nothing wrong with you. We know that, but you're just down. He says, get your head back on straight and come back and take the test again. Well, in the meantime, I came down here and went to work. Well, I came back down here and I fell and broke my arm. And I couldn't get a job. I broke this arm. A spiral fracture up that arm, and then I couldn't get a job, so I just piddled around. When that healed up, I got on with the city PD here in Gina. And I worked there for a while, and then, like I say, went in the Army National Guard. Then Wayne McGuffey called me and offered me a job at the sheriff's office. This was in 85, 86, I think. I went to work there and worked there for 11 years, something, almost 12 years. Not enough to be vested in the retirement system. And then I left there for 4 years, went to work for the Southern Heritage Bank in the computer area.
Yes, sir.
And then after that 4 years, Carl Smith was elected sheriff, and he wanted me to go to work for him. So I went back to the sheriff's office, and I've been there since 2000.
Yes, sir.
And hope to be there for another 4 years.
Yes, sir. Well, I know you mentioned this earlier, but do you have any close friendships from your service that you continue today?
Yes, there's several, but Dale Coffin and I, you know, like I say, he's like a brother to me. And I say that with all sincerity. He's a good guy. We've been friends for 50 years now.
Yes, sir.
His children are kind of my godchildren, you know, that they were different religions, so they wanted somebody to take care of their children when they were little, and he named me as the person to take care of them if something ever happened to he and his wife. Now they're grown and have kids of their own and grandkids of their own.
Yes, sir.
That's been a long time, but yeah, we're very close. I was real close to another guy, and he used to come here and duck hunt with me all the time. I've lost contact with him. I can't find him.
Yes, sir. Well, have you been involved in any veterans organizations?
I was with VFW for a while, and Vietnam veterans, you know, for a while, but I'm not involved with them at this time.
Well, are there any impactful memories or events that you have that you'd be willing to share today?
Any what kind of?
Any memorable events that you'd be willing to share?
Oh, there's a lot of things that you know that happen. Some of them I just decline to talk about, or I'd rather not talk about. Others are humorous things, you know, that happened in going through survival school in the prison camp phase of it. We had to go through an area. Of course, we had to go through a confidence course, what they call a confidence course, where you have to crawl on your belly and make sure you don't set off any flares. You know, you're crawling just. It took me, I imagine a couple of hours to go through it. They said the Navy SEALs had come through there just to try it out. They went through it in 15 minutes and undid all their flares and everything and captured the guys that done it. But for me, I thought, you know, I didn't get captured. I didn't set off any flares.
Yes, sir.
And then we had to be in a prison camp phase. After we got through, we had to surrender to the guards, and they put us through a prison camp phase, and they put us in black boxes and made us bend over and bang on the boxes. Of course, they kept us in a cell with just a pan of water with some, I guess it was just wet toilet tissue down in the bottom of it, but you didn't know whether to drink it or not, you know. So it was dark. They play this weird Asian music all night long, you know, keep you awake. If you fell asleep on your feet, and I'm bad about snoring, and I could sleep on my feet. It wasn't nothing to me to sleep on my feet. So I'd go to snore. And they'd come bang on the prison cage that I was in and wake me up, you know, make me come out and stand at attention or put me in some kind of stress position to tire me out more. And then after you got out of that phase of it, you went into the prison yard where everybody was in a prison yard. And the humorous part of it was when they brought me in before Boris, who was the commandant, and he was sitting there eating a baked trout with rice and vegetables, and I was starving to death. All we'd had was hot sweet tea and rice to eat for 2 days. So he reaches in with his fork and plucks out the eye, and he points at me. He says, "You want the eye?" And I stood up straight, and I said, "No, I don't want the eye." Well, they critiqued me on that. And after we all got back in the classroom, and he told me, he says, "Sergeant," he says, "don't ever turn down food, no matter what it is." He says, "You eat whatever's offered to you. If you're ever captured," he said, "never turn down food." So it was a learning experience. It was funny. He thought it was funny. And And then the other portion, we were in there and we had to go in a booth where everybody could see us. It was just glass walls. And they would come in, you know, you'd go in there and you'd sit down and somebody may come in and interrogate you.
Mhm.
The whole class is watching. Well, I'm sitting in there, and of course they already knew my background. But they made me go in there and strip off all my clothes in front of all these people. Of course, I'm a hairy person anyway. And I'm sitting there in a chair waiting for somebody to come in. And here comes this clown. he was a waiter, he was a, what do you call him? Guys that mop the floors.
Yes, sir.
He came in with his mop. He's mopping all around. And he looks up at me. He stops and he takes a cigarette out of his pocket and he puts it in his mouth and he said, "You got a match?" Of course, I hadn't got a stitch on, so that was humorous, you know.
Yes, sir.
I'm sitting there shaking my head. Of course, I can't hear what's going on outside. They said that class was just rolling out there, you know.
Yes, sir.
But there's a lot of funny things happen in the service.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, sir, for your service and for your time today. And also, I'd like to thank Mom for doing the camera here and for bearing. Also, thank you for bearing with us with our map falling over and our camera difficulties we had.
It's no problem. I'm glad to do it. I appreciate you. Thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you. Yes, sir.